And then invite your mind to join you, to join your body sitting here instead of wherever it might be. An easy way to accomplish that is to simply place your attention on the breath going in and out of your body, either at the tip of your nose or as your belly rises and falls. And give yourself permission to let go of everything else that you plan to do later or all the things that you've done today. And honor your decision to show up to this class by setting aside your thoughts of other things. And you might ask yourself, why did I show up? What's my reason? Okay, so when you feel like, okay, your body and mind are both present, perhaps we can acknowledge each other. My name is Tendrin, in case I haven't met you before. And so this topic of discovering Buddhism is on refuge. So that's a topic that tends to, it's a more, you want to be a little bit familiar with Buddhism before addressing this particular topic, because refuge is something that we use to describe a Buddhist practitioner. A Buddhist practitioner is someone who goes for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So we'll be discussing what that means. So I don't know everybody's background. So is this a brand new subject for anybody? Okay.
Hi. So it, I guess, kind of is for me. I studied multiple, different philosophies, religions, stuff like that, but never like in depth. So I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be taking this course.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Okay. All right. So then, yeah, but no, I'm new.
Okay. That just is helpful for me to know.
Yes.
And also, that anybody who, everybody's at a different place with their study. And so to understand that some things may just go over your head completely, and other things, but it may resonate for someone else in the class because they've been studying for a longer period of time. And then, and then other things like, it's just a description. So, so everybody will hear different emphasis because of your filters, so from depending on where you're coming from is what's gonna, resonate for you and what will sound more important to you. So so there's no problem with that. But, feel free to interrupt me or send me a question in chat. Anthony will kind of notice if it's a good time to read it out, but it's also, we're a small group. So it's, we can also just raise your hand or something. There's a little device for that under participants, I think, or maybe reactions. I don't know. Anyway, you can also just do it physically. So I might be able to notice. Anyway, so Refuge. So I sent a bunch of readings. And so the first article by His Holiness will kind of give sort of an overview. Again, there'll be lots, if you're new to this material, there'll be lots of jargon in it that you might not get. Don't worry about it. Just bring those questions, or you can always email me. My email address, can you type that in, Anthony, into the chat? But it's just tendron108@yahoo.com. I'm very accessible. So don't feel hesitant to email me. So, all right. I seem to have a bunch of things open on my desktop. I have no idea why. Let me get this down. Okay, so I'm going to ask y'all, what are you hoping to understand from this class? I mean, someone who's brand new is just wanting to be introduced to the topic, but someone who's not brand new, what might you be curious about? I can't wait to see who jumps in. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, I always hear that taking refuge in the Dharma and in some of the prayers. I don't actually know what that means. So I'm looking forward to learn what that means. I know what the word refuge means, but I assume it's mean a little bit different here. So I'm very excited to learn about that. What's that?
It's going to be specific to this topic. So, so what does refuge mean to you?
Taking comfort or taking comfort or solace.
Okay.
I would say.
Thank you. How about anybody else? What does refuge mean to you? Just in general.
Relying on something.
Relying on something. Okay.
Are you asking for other people to participate or more elaboration?
No, just anybody jump in.
Yes, hi, Islamo. I
Hi.
look at refuge in the BOI still now as something as to protect myself and others, to rely on, to
Okay.
feel safe. And now I'm looking into deeper meanings
Okay.
from when I started.
So
Thank you.
it's a source of protection, a source of safety,
Yeah.
something to rely upon.
I always thought, oh, sorry to interrupt.
No, I was going to say, through this refuge, there's for myself, there's a logical meaning to it as to why I can have faith in this.
Right. And we'll go into the Buddhist view in just a moment.
Thank you.
John.
I was just going to say that, from the way I understood that word, or I've used it before Buddhism, was almost like a passive form of protection. So it always confused me, or I had trouble with that it was like, okay, I'm just kind of giving up and somebody else will protect me or something like that.
Okay. Does that resonate with anybody else? I mean, I know that personally, there are times where I wish somebody just come down from the sky and tell me what to do. You know, it's like, please save me from this situation and tell me what to do because I don't know what to do. You know, I think that sometimes there's a part of us that really wishes we could do that, you know. Now, I also know that if that happened, I'd argue. You know, I mean, let's face it. I wouldn't just take their word for it.
That's why you're my teacher.
So, you know, the good news is in Buddhism, refuge has a particular meaning, and it is not that. It is not that, oh, great, we can just have a Buddha fly down and tell us what to do. So let me figure out how to do the next thing. Okay. Now, everybody, is that showing up on everybody's screen? All right. So this is a quote from our fearless leader, the spiritual director of all the FPMT centers, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. If you don't study Buddhism, you won't know the qualities of Buddha. You won't know the qualities of Dharma, and you won't know the qualities of Sangha. You won't know their qualities and their power. So basically, your refuge is kind of like blind faith. In Tibetan, it's called mongta, or ta, I think. Blind faith, ignorant devotion. And that's not the best motivation or refuge because it's not very stable, because it's just accepting the words of someone else or accepting what your parents taught you, you know, that kind of thing. And so, you know, as soon as you meet someone whose beliefs are different and that you have more confidence in, you'll switch your belief. Am I blocking any of the screen? Okay, because I'm looking at y'all, so I can't see what you see.
No,
So.
we can see the entire slide deck. Slideshow.
Okay. So what we want to explore is, what do we take refuge in already? And we can kind of, you know, explore this by just looking at our habits. Like when we're in a hurry, what do we make sure we do? You know, I always make sure I brush my teeth before going out of the house. When I was young and had hair, I always made time to be able to wash my hair. It might be wet when I walked out the door, but I always washed my hair because I had oily hair and I didn't like it. So I always wash my hair. Now, if I wake up and I'm out of tea, I don't think the day can go well. You know, sometimes I feel like, oh, if I just have time for a shower, then everything will be okay. So I'm relying on these very ordinary, mundane things to, like Robert said in the beginning, comfort myself, to make myself feel kind of protected, you know. This is how we put on our sort of costume for the day. You know, women sometimes wear makeup, you know, I've never done that. So that wasn't one of my go-tos, but I washed my hair, you know. Once I developed a nice, lovely discovery of what caffeine could do for me, you know, I'd have my tea. And then how many times have you woken up and chosen to go back to sleep instead of face the day with a bright smile? So, In these ways, this is something that we can kind of start to see what we're relying upon by just examining our own personal habits, particularly those that we just can't seem to not do, or if we can't do it at all, we feel really kind of disturbed by it. Not greatly, it's like if a hurricane knocks out all our power and we can't take a shower and we can't have our tea and we, blah, 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 it will only irritate us momentarily from, well, in between worries about, what damage has been done, where's the food, how are we going to eat, all those things. But those things that we kind of feel a certain sense of need for to go through the day are things we're relying upon. Does that make sense? So it's kind of amusing sometimes to just really notice, what do I rely upon? Like if you've had a bad day, and you decide, oh, I think, a few chocolate cookies would be good, or I'll have a couple of beers. That these are ways in which we turn to change the way we're feeling. So if you look it up, shelter, protection, retreat, sanctuary. So what are some of the positive things that you take refuge in now? I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. What are some other, I'm also take refuge in the fact that people care for each other. I have people who care about me.
Yes, it's Lomo again. I can honestly say that at this space and time in my life, that the only refuge that I can and works for me is the Guru Buddha Dharma Sangha.
Well, that's excellent. I rejoice in that.
Yes, yeah.
I also take refuge in things like I know I have compassion. Do I have universal compassion for everybody? Not yet. I still have a great deal of difficulty with snakes.
Oh, okay.
I also take refuge in the fact that most people around the world can be relied upon. We see it in times of disasters, where people help each other out. Most people don't break the law. I take refuge in these things. And I don't think those are negative things. The non-productive things that I take refuge in are the, brownies and, stuff like that. I've been sick all day because I've been trying to give up my dependence on milk because I really don't like the way cows are taken care of. But everything else makes me sick. So every time I have this little experiment with myself, I get sick. So it's just, so I don't know why I keep beating myself in the head with it, but I do. Sometimes we take sometimes we rely on our disturbing states of mind, like anger, to protect us. I know that when I don't want to feel disappointed or hurt, I turn to anger, because then I don't have to feel disappointed or hurt. So these are just ways in which we can start observing our current habits, of kind of looking at what do we do when we're feeling vulnerable or a bit uncomfortable with a situation, or how we make ourselves get out of bed in the mornings and, meet the world head on. So we can explore whether they're useful or not. In Buddhism, the causes for taking refuge, there are two main causes: fear and faith. Isn't that encouraging? So it's a fear of suffering, and then having the confidence or faith that there's a refuge that can protect us from that suffering. So it is this kind of way of finding some safety, a way to protect us from suffering. It's just not like my fantasy of having someone come down and tell me what to do, although it's similar to that. So when text and Buddhist teachings are talking about trying to generate refuge, these are the supports for that, is that we think about the sufferings that exist in cyclic existence. Samsara is one of those words that is jargon. It means the cycle of existence controlled by karma and delusion. So in other words, this cycle of birth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death, and suffering, all the aging, sickness, and, death in between. All the different forms and ways in which we suffer. And then the faith is having found a method for reducing suffering or preventing future suffering. This will make more sense later. Yeshisopa, who was the abbot who ordained me, I don't know, 20 years ago, something like that. Not quite that long, 19 years ago. If you are very afraid of something, you will seek protection. If you have confidence that someone has the power to protect you from what you fear, you will take refuge in him or her from deep in your heart. So what's an example or an illustration of some, of a common scenario where this happens?
I think growing up, I often took refuge in my parents. I'd be having a rough day at school or needed to solve a problem. I would seek refuge in them.
Yeah. So people who were fortunate enough to have a safe family environment, their first source of refuge are their parents. Our survival as babies absolutely depends on a caregiver. We need everything from something else or someone else. And that's a very basic fear we have, is there won't be food and there will, we won't be protected. We'll be left alone. And so for children, their source of refuge is their caretaker, the person they can turn to when they need something or when they're frightened or upset. And as we've all seen, children take this refuge deeply. If you've seen any of the scenes from the border, from the immigration things of families being separated and children not knowing where their parents are, and the insanity that causes, the deep fear of that. We all had that need as young children to feel that we could have safety. So they talk about 3 types of faith in Buddhism. Clear faith, or clarifying faith, or lucid faith. You'll see a lot of different translations. Aspiring faith, and the faith of conviction. So clear faith is just the faith that arises from understanding the good qualities of whatever the object of refuge is and appreciating them. So this is your very base level of faith. And it can kind of be blind faith when, from the time you're a child, you're taught that, the Buddha is special and you can rely upon, him and blah, 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 then it's easy to have this kind of faith as you grow up. Because they tell you all these stories about why this is a good guy, blah, blah, blah. Aspiring faith is when you've gone a little deeper into these qualities and you have confidence in the qualities. You understand what they are, and you see how they can be helpful, and you want to attain these qualities yourself. So you see these, it's like when people we admire, we start to understand the traits they have that make them admirable. And then we try to emulate that. We want to do that. We want to succeed in attaining those qualities. And then finally is the faith of conviction. This is the faith that develops through using our reasoning, and it gives rise to a deep conviction that's possible to actually perfect all good qualities. So it goes way beyond just aspiring. Now you are convinced that it's possible to attain them. And this just strengthens your aspiration and your practice, doing whatever you need to do in order to attain these good qualities. So the basic definition of a Buddhist practitioner is a person who from the depths of his or her heart goes for refuge in the 3 jewels. The 3 jewels being the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha being the person who taught the Dharma being the method, and the Sangha being the group of people who, help you put into practice the teachings of the Buddha. Yes, Jack.
What is the definition of Dharma? You mentioned it a couple of days ago, but I have forgotten.
Dharma. Okay. It means the actual, if you say Dharma with a little d, in Sanskrit, it means all phenomena, any phenomena. Everything's a dharma. This is a dharma, this is a dharma. It just means phenomena that exist, things that exist. And underneath that definition means it holds its own entity. So, this is a watch with a pink band, things like that. So it's just, it holds, we can distinguish it from one thing or another. We may not have names for it, words for it, all those kinds of things, but it basically, a dharma means it holds its identity or entity. In Buddhism, the Dharma with the big D, capital D, is that which holds back suffering, holds us back from suffering. So the Dharma, when it's used in this context, when we're talking about the Buddha's teachings, or going to the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the Dharma are the instructions that help us prevent future suffering. That help? So how can we tell if we're going for refuge? Obviously, if you have, most of you haven't gone for refuge. But one of the ways, we need to know, how can we tell when we're going, what we're relying on? And it's these things we've been talking about, where, who do we turn to when things go wrong? In the context of Buddhism, it's, do we rely on the teachings of the Buddha? Do we turn to the teachings of the Buddha to use as a way to find our way? Do we turn to the law of cause and effect, or karma, in Buddhism? This is a teaching of the Buddha. Do we turn to the teachings on how to transform our minds? Or do we instead revert to our old habits of, of mundane, worldly things, like eating the brownies, to take a short-term approach to our sufferings? So I'm not happy with what happened today, so I'll just eat some good food. And that'll make me feel better. So these are the kind of questions, when you're observing yourself over the next few weeks, you can start discovering, what are you relying on? What are you actually taking refuge on in now? And it'll be a variety of things. Some you'll see as being useful, and others not so much. It's like if you've had a hard day at work and you decide, instead of going to the gym, you decide to come home and plop down on the couch and watch TV. And then when it's time to go to bed, you find yourself not feeling any better, really, just more tired, because you didn't do anything to really shift from that hard working day. Other times it might have been the perfect solution. We're all talking the same language here. In order to be able to go for refuge, this deep, heartfelt refuge, we have to make it personal. So as Geshe Sopa said, a general understanding and trust in these teachings will not bring heartfelt refuge. In order to sincerely seek help, you need to connect these points to yourself. So as you read this information, and as you think about the information in this class, it really is important to look at your own habits in order to understand the teachings, also in order to evaluate whether the Buddhist teachings or doing anything for you. You know, sometimes we might think that, you know, I mean, there's times I think, oh, I'm a nun and I'm still relying on chocolate, you know, how insane is that? But, you know, it's just, we just need to be able to, those are those times when you can recognize, yeah, well, what you're using isn't going to ever work, you know? Chocolate's never going to prevent suffering in the future. It may prevent a little suffering for about a second. It won't even, you know, last as long as the chocolate does in your mouth, because, you know, how long do you notice it? Your mind's moved on to something else as soon as that first taste is gone. You know. So the point, you know, so for all of you that have been studying for a while, this is key with all the teachings, is you do need to have the knowledge of the teachings, but then you really have to connect the dots with your own life. And this is one of the key reasons why there are basically two main types of Buddhist refuge. And that's the causal refuge. And this is what we do in the beginning, where because we found some good qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, you know, we rely on, you know, enlightened beings who are already there, the teachings which we have access to. We're not living in the time of a Buddha like Shakyamuni Buddha, so we don't have the benefit of seeing him in action. But we're turning to an external source for refuge. Resultant refuge is when we start developing the confidence in our future Buddhahood. You know, and this comes from seeing ourselves start to change because of the teachings, but because of putting into practice the teachings. And you start to, and because you're really investigating the teachings, you start to see the cause and effect of how this could work. I do it in reverse. You know, basically I go, okay, if a Buddha is omniscient and it has nothing but perfect good qualities and doesn't have any ignorance and knows exactly what to do, what would you need to be able to do that? You know, well, you'd need to be able to know the minds of all sentient beings. You can't help sentient beings unless you know their minds. You know? So you have to be able to do that. So what? Oh, well, then you would certainly need great compassion, because we don't even listen to people. You know? So most of the time, you know, we only kind of casually notice somebody else is in the room with us. You know, so Buddha is much more attentive than that. So, you know, and so these things have to be in place. So I go backwards to see, like, okay, it makes sense that you have to have done this. It makes sense. So what do you need to be able to do that? Well, for one thing, you need concentration. You really need to have strong concentration. So if you decide to be paying attention to something, nothing will distract you from it. So you might need calm abiding. You know? And so how would you need to do that? And then there's steps to learning how to do that. So this is, for me, that, you know, it's just using this logic. And since I've seen myself change, you know, by following the instructions and the teachings, I have confidence that those things that I have not succeeded with yet, it's possible to succeed with them once I put them into practice. Just like other things that I have put into practice, I've been more successful with. So that's my approach. There are also 3 levels of refuge. And this goes back to the idea that there are 3 different capabilities of sentient beings, and all of us pretty much start with just wanting less suffering in the next life. Now, as Westerners, most of us start with, what do you mean next life? so we have some work to do in that area. But assuming there's a future life, we certainly want to find out what to do so we have less suffering in the next life, so we get a good rebirth. Then a middle, yeah.
So then there's 4 steps for Westerners, starting with the
Well,
less
the first
suffering
step's
in
not
this
even
life.
refuge. It's not a level of refuge, it's pre-refuge. So yeah, there's a lot of steps in order to even get to the level of refuge, So now some people I know, even though they were born in the West and, totally raised in the Western culture, from a very early age, they had no problem with the idea of rebirth. They completely believe in rebirth. No doubt at all. And that's usually due to the fact that they either have strong recollections when they're born or they've just studied it in the past, in previous lives. So the middle link is just wanting to, let's get out of samsara altogether. Cyclic existence is nothing but, illness, aging, and death, and there's a way to stop that. I want to get out. And then finally, where we really would like to head is this desire not only to get out, but to be able to help everyone else get out too. And so this is what the desire to become enlightened starts with. We start thinking about this. They say refuge is the gateway to the teachings. Obviously, that doesn't mean that's where you start. What it means is that when you finally feel like, when you finally just do take refuge in the teachings, that is an entry into the teachings at a much more, there'll be more, it'll mean something different to you, and the teachings will have more power for you. So this, so you take refuge and then you more thoroughly examine the laws of causality. You try to understand what is the basis for happiness, which is what virtue is, and how do you stop doing the things that are only going to end in suffering. So you study karma, because this is the, understanding karma is what helps us know that, oh, if I keep doing this action, I'm just going to keep reaping the results of suffering, like killing. So the method for developing refuge is you develop faith in the good qualities. So we go through the good qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Then you aspire to achieve those. If the good qualities make any sense to you, then it can, we try to not see it as something only an enlightened being can do, as if somehow they're different from us, because they're not. We have the same basis. All enlightened beings were just like us, stuck in samsara. Then that desire to attain these qualities helps us, persevere through the difficulties of attaining them. We need to remove all our doubts, increase our wisdom, remove all of our ignorance, and really develop the faith of conviction. These are the ways in which we start strengthening our confidence in the path. See, Lama Yeshe and I would have gotten along I mean, yes, she is the founder of the FPMT. It wasn't called the FPMT then, I don't think, but was Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teacher. I have discovered that the light of wisdom is the only vehicle to liberate myself from confusion, suffering, and ego conflict. So now, instead of my taking refuge in chocolate and I guess it says ice cream, I will really inwardly trust, inwardly completely rely on the object of Buddha, Dharma, wisdom, and profound Sangha. But this takes time. This takes trial and error. It takes experience. It takes, being willing, taking an open mind, exploring the teachings, meditating, thinking about them some more, trying them out in our lives and going, I don't know about that. Oh, yeah, maybe this. I'm starting to see some possibility here. And you give it a shot for a long time. It's not something that 3 weeks from now, you'll know whether or not this is, going to work for you. Any thoughts or questions or, we're going to define what a Buddha is. Sort of. It's not really a definition. But a Buddha is a being who has removed all faults and has perfected all good qualities and has done this through removing all ignorance. Because according to Buddhism, according to the teachings of the Buddha, all of our troublesome states of mind, all of our negative actions come from our lack of wisdom about how we exist. And so as we develop our wisdom, we will abandon our faults. But we need to understand how they all work together. So we study the mind, learn about disturbing states of mind, learn about minds that are accurate and those that we wish to develop, discover the benefits of equanimity towards all beings. All these various things we've talked about in other courses in discovering Buddhism. So Buddha is someone who has already achieved that. They're omniscient. They know the past, present, and future simultaneously. Because their minds are not obscured from anything. A Buddhist mind is present everywhere. In every moment. There's just no barrier. What keeps us from that is our incorrect view. It's our mind. Since we misunderstand how things exist, this clouds the mind, preventing us from being able to see how things actually are, be able to understand the minds of all other beings, to understand interdependence. This is what makes a Buddha a valid being to follow a path. The Buddha's teachings are valid because he's actualized those teachings. Now, this is one of the things that's very interesting in Buddhism. Obviously, you have to develop some confidence in the teachings of the Buddha and the qualities that a Buddha is, supposedly holds. Because it's not talking about people who think they're Buddhas. It's talking about what a Buddha is. So in Sanskrit, the word Buddha Bud means waking up. So it's often, the Buddha is often referred to as the awakened one. In Tibetan, the word is Sangye. So Sang means cleansed, purified. Ge means developed all good qualities. So it's saying that when everyone, all sentient beings who are stuck in samsara, have everything they need to become an enlightened being. We share the same nature with an enlightened being. The difference means between an ordinary being and an enlightened being is this purification. A Buddha has ceased all negative thoughts, actions of body and speech, removed all ignorance. So all that remains is wisdom and the qualities that arise from wisdom. So anger is not possible. Greed is not possible. Pride is not possible. So when they talk about living beings having Buddha nature, this is what it's getting at, that we have what we need in order to become enlightened. What's in our way are our mistaken states of mind. So this is a very different view than other traditions. So it isn't that the enlightened beings can do this work for us, or that when we die, we just get to a pure land. It's that we will keep going from life after life after life in this kind of suffering existence until we remove our ignorance and quit doing actions, negative actions of body and speech that create the cause of suffering in the future. Thoughts on that? Christine, are you just like, I have no clue what she is talking about? Or have you fallen asleep?
No, I couldn't unmute. Sorry. No, actually, I'm following along pretty well. Like I said, I've read some, but just beginning.
Yeah, well, great.
Thank you.
Just checking in.
Honorable Tension.
Yes.
Yes, it's something I reflect on every day, especially towards the end of meditation, or recalling emptiness and also bodhicitta. So always trying to bring it back to perspective and put it in my own words and understanding. And it seems to be evolving every day. Some days I can grasp it more clearly than other days. So it's very subtle and elusive to see the I that I perceive to exist and that I grasp onto.
All we can do is think about it every day. And so we haven't done the emptiness module this year yet, but we will. But it's, I mean, this is, or maybe y'all did. While I was gone, is the emptiness module happened? I can't hear.
We did something with it. I don't know if it was the emptiness module.
Was Venerable Rabina the emptiness teacher? She's the.
I don't remember who was the teacher, but I remember getting the book on emptiness.
I think it might have been.
Well,
that's a start.
I'm going through it again.
So anyway, so emptiness is referring to the thing that we don't understand. So, you know, as far as jargon goes, when you hear the word emptiness and or voidness or selflessness is, you know, basically the Buddhas or enlightened beings, their assertion of how we exist. And we don't get that. That's the ignorance we have. We don't understand. And what does it mean to say we're selfless? What does it mean to say we're empty? You know, and it means a very specific thing. And, you know, but even knowing the words, oh, we're empty of inherent existence. We're empty of, you know, having a permanent, unified, independent self. We're empty of these different things. Doesn't stop our grasping at self as inherently existent. So it's this is a process, you know, and all we can do is think about it every day and recognize that, oh, maybe I'm getting on the right track. And then of course you lose it because this takes a lot of time. Yes, Lamo. Whoops. There you
Okay.
go.
I remember when I first started, you know, taking seriously like all of the teachings that, you know, if you were a Buddha or wanted to become a Buddha or enlightened, that meant that everything and all the time you'd be just happy, joyous, and free.
You mean like Lama Zopa Rinpoche?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you got me on that one. And His Holiness.
And His Holiness, yes.
But yet I have seen where what I believe His Holiness and Lama Zopa Rinpoche manifests not always just ha ha ha,
Right.
you know, in angry ways, but not attached to it. It's a practice of mind. So sometimes many Dharma centers, everybody thinks they're supposed to be just always fine. They, you know, what I've learned that it's okay that I'm not fine, because otherwise I'd be with Lama Zopa.
Right, you'd already be enlightened.
Yes, exactly. You know, but I found that, you know, I don't know why it appears that way to me. It might not appear that way to anyone else. But when people ask, how are you doing? You know, if it's in a Dharma group, everybody's always happy, they're fine. And so
I hadn't noticed
yeah.
that, but I do think that we do tend to just give the stock reply that we think people want to hear. So, but I do think one of the conflicts that people have, and I don't think it exists just in Buddhist circles, I think it happens in all circles of spiritual paths, all traditions, is that we have the idea that if someone shows up to a Buddhist group, they're already enlightened.
Oh,
You know, so they'll never say anything impatient, or they'll never get angry, or they'll never be greedy, or they'll never do this or that. We can have a real honeymoon period when we show up in the beginning at a spiritual center, and really be quite shocked if we see someone behaving, you know, so obviously against the teachings. But but that's the reality, you know, of course that's going to happen. And that's why Rinpoche includes in all the advice about working at Dharma centers is how to handle, you know, difficult situations, because, you know, this is why we're still here in samsara. Not that samsara is a place, samsara is just a result of our negative states of mind.
Yes, thank you. You explained it, what I was trying to, much better than I did. Thank you.
Yeah. So, this is, so we look towards the Buddha and the descriptions of the Buddha as a way to get a sense of what does it mean to say someone has no faults? What does that look like? What can it be? And so one of the things, that I thought could make an interesting like meditation for those of you who've been studying before. I hate it when I look up something on my tablet and then I go to my computer and think that it will be bookmarked, and it isn't. Okay. You'll see in some texts and maybe even in the readings about the 32 major marks and 80 minor marks of a Buddha, or marks and signs of a Buddha. And this is all, so if you look at a stylized statue or painting of a Buddha, you'll see certain features, like you'll see the crown protrusion on the head. Like if you look at Lamo's stained glass, it looks like a little gold thing on top of his head, but it's, or a top knot of hair, which is referred to as a crown. There's a crown protrusion underneath it. You'll see wheels on the palms of the hands, like little Dharma wheels, and on the bottoms of the feet. And you'll see, very tightly coiled strands of hair in different places. And you'll see long earlobes, and these all symbolize things. So these aren't just that, oh, the Buddha looked like this. What they do is they represent it. So I don't know if you can see this thing from Study Buddhism from Alexander Berzin, which describes these marks and signs. So on the sole of each of a Buddha's feet and on the palm of his hands is the impression of a 1,000-spoked wheel. The causes of Buddha's having always greeted and escorted his spiritual mentor and having had a selfless attitude of offering personal service to others. So if you read what these marks and signs actually mean, it gives you an idea of what an enlightened being can do. Because it's just like the fingers and toes are connected with a web of white light. This comes from having practiced the 4 ways that gather others under one's positive influence: being generous, speaking kindly, giving encouragement regarding the points of the Dharma, and setting oneself as an example by acting in accord with those points. The skin of a Buddha, no matter how old he is, remains unwrinkled and as smooth as that of an infant nursing on his mother's milk. This reflects his always been generous with nourishing food and drink. So it's like the fingers and toes are extremely long. This comes from his having saved the lives of animals about to be slaughtered. So even if the image doesn't mean anything to you, or you can't imagine why they put that for this, the point of it is that it's symbolic of these things. It's not just decorative or elaborate. It's it's referring to all these different qualities of a Buddha. Like he's, you know, supposed to be really tall, and this is because he, you know, he abandoned taking life. So there are, you know, 32 of them, and then there are 80 more. The eyelashes are beautiful and long. This comes from his having regarded others without any attachment, hostility, or naivete. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe he'll tell us. Just click it once. It's a subcategory of ignorance, the unawareness of behavioral cause and effect, or a reality that accompanies only destructive states of mind. So this can really be a nice way to for those who are interested, this can make a nice meditation. If you spend a couple of weeks just going through some of these lines, and you kind of can picture, if you have a Buddha picture, a statue, you can kind of start putting these features, because that's what it's, this having representations of the Buddha on your altar or in Buddhist centers on the walls or wherever is meant to remind us of these qualities. That's its point. So a Buddhist practitioner who's been studying a while can look at these images and recall the qualities. It's not just, it has nothing to do with the statue. It has to do with those, mental qualities, those, qualities of actions, of speech that an enlightened being would have. So, it's the same way, like if say you have great confidence in Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and so you see a picture of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and just looking at that picture reminds you of his bodhicitta attitude. There's nothing in the picture that indicates that. It's just with your familiarity with his habits, that's what comes to mind. So it can be inspiring. This is the purpose of all this imagery, So you see these ones that are of Tara or of Chenrezig, 1,000 arms. That all means something. It's a picture language of good qualities. So it's a really good way to be inspired, especially since this is not part of our culture. So some people, like the first time I walked into a Tibetan Buddhist center, it was like, whoa, what is all this stuff? It was not appealing to me. For some people, boy, they see that and they're just bam. I have a friend who was, she's passed away, but she said, when she met Buddhism, she finally understood what all the images she had as a child were, because she had visions of Amitabha Buddha, but she didn't know what they were until, 20 years later, and she walked into a Buddhist center. So it's just, these are not, that's why they encourage us to look at the images, use it as an object of meditation to develop our concentration, so that we are attracted to these images in the future. Because this is not our culture. We were born in a different culture, so they may not be appealing to us. But if we cultivate, and for me, the way to be cultivated is through the qualities. because you know, the style of the artist of these statues or the paintings, you know, and the Tibetan paintings are very, what would you call it? Regimented, I guess you could call it. You know, there's, you have to learn how to draw the pictures of the Buddha so that you get them correctly, because every part has a meaning. So that, you know, and the wonderful thing is that most people, when they take a class, can make a beautiful image because they're following these very precise instructions. So there's symmetry and there's, you know, it's really interesting. One of the nuns started painting tankas, has no art background, you know, now paints these beautiful tankas. You know, she's taking some classes now, but it's just really interesting. You never know what's going to write them. So, but this is the point of all these symbols, is to inspire us about these good qualities, you know, and it just can be a stepping stone to, okay, why is that a good quality? To think about, what does that mean? You know? So like when you think about a small child, I remember one time coming home, I came home and no one was there. And I just really freaked. I was young. I don't know, maybe 10, you know, maybe a little younger than that. So I just sat in my closet until someone got home, you know, lived in the big, scary city of New Orleans. I didn't want to be home alone. So, but we want to understand that the teachings, if we internalize them, really can protect us. Because if we change the way we act, if we change the way we speak, if we change the way we think, we're creating the cause for happiness. So that, you know, so it's, you know, so it's really worthwhile investigating the teachings. It's like, okay, you know, it's a big assertion of Buddhism. Like, you know, we have a method that can end your suffering. You have to put it into practice. You know, but here's the tools. This is how to do it. We are so fortunate to live in a time where these teachings are still available, even though the Buddha is not here. And of course, Shakyamuni Buddha is the fourth Buddha of this eon, of 1,000. So Maitreya will be next, if we're on this planet and this universe at that time. So I encourage you to read some, you know, like look at this website, you know, and read some of this with this kind of curiosity, you know. It's really easy to just kind of go, oh, you know, all this stuff, but it has meaning. It's not just a list to be memorized. It's really a to-do list of what you can do in order to create the cause of happiness. Thoughts, questions?
My venerable Tendrin.
Yeah.
I think it's very helpful. I think we have all these images I'm always visualizing, but not necessarily reflecting on just how many qualities there are. I know, for example, what the bowl represents and hands touching the floor, but 32, it's a lot to reflect on. And a lot of times as I meditate and try to understand, well, how will realizing this lead to Buddhahood? I can't quite draw the connections, but I think, you know, having looked at some of the examples you went through, I think it's particularly helpful because it helps draw those connections.
Exactly. So this is what we want to make it, not some mystical, magical thing. We want to really understand these are actions Compassion is an action of mind. You know, it's a feeling a particular way. And then with equanimity, it means that we can have this experience for all living beings. You know, these are the qualities we want to develop because they are the causes of happiness. We don't even have to understand you know, I mean, you can just start there. What are the causes of happiness? I know I suffer. I get that part. What might help with this? So, you know, and of course we have many courses, and this is why we talk about the mind all the time, because that's the main source of our suffering, you know. And so if we transform it, it can become the source of our happiness. So we're going to do a little meditation. Go ahead, Lamo.
While you were describing your when you walk first into a Dharma center, I'm going to date myself now. However, when I first saw, especially Tibetan Buddhism, I was like, I thought I was in a rock concert, that this was the best rock concert. And I remember, and I remember my thoughts from back in the 60s, late 60s, of trying to figure out one of the Beatles albums, if you know the vinyl, if you play it backwards, then you'll get the hidden meaning.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, it just reminded me, and I loved it. It just fit with my oddness.
Well, this is the good news, isn't it? Okay. All right. Now, we're going to do a little meditation that I've also included in those links. Yes, Robert.
Yeah, the Buddha being the Buddha, and then the Dharma and the community. Do they all hold equal weight? I mean, it seemed like the Buddha would hold.
The Dharma has the most weight because
really?
the Dharma are the instructions.
Okay.
The Dharma is what we have to listen to and you know, and then implement. So the actual refuge is considered the Dharma. The Buddha is the person who provided these teachings. And if we had the merit to be born when he was present, we'd actually see him in action. But it's the Dharma that's the actual, and we'll go through Dharma next week along with Sangha, you know. So yeah, we'll get there. But they all have eight qualities, because after all, equanimity is the thing, right? but you really can't count the qualities of any of them. I mean, you know, it's there. If there are 84,000 causes of suffering, there are 84,000 causes of happiness, because they're the antidotes to all those causes of suffering. So just ignore me if I'm just rattling now. Okay, so let's do a little meditation. So, you know, first, let's just rejoice that we showed up. We didn't snore. We didn't, you know, and that's only to protect my feelings that you don't snore. So I appreciate it. But really feel good about having set an intention to show up, and you did show up. And so, and now just kind of find your kind of quiet spot of body and mind, so you can close your eyes if you're comfortable. And just follow your breath for a few breaths. So our back is straight, our head is upright, it's relaxed, our shoulders are relaxed. Using your breath, release the muscles in your face. So refuge is like going for ultimate help. It's as though we're on a boat caught on a very stormy, scary sea. If we have refuge, we can see a harbor that looks very safe and calm. So Buddhists take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The Buddha is the one who taught us the path to end all suffering. The Dharma is that path. The realizations of that path within our own minds. And the Sangha are those who can help us progress along the way. So bring to mind a particular mental problem or difficulty you're having. Just something or someone you don't want to have. And try to be specific. And think about the suffering that it brings. Now imagine yourself surrounded by all other living beings who suffer in similar ways. Imagine that they're really here. Allow your heart to really open. Imagine that this problem or difficulty, imagine it as a physical disease or a great source of pain. What would be the best way to treat this? What do you need? Probably you need a skilled healer to diagnose the cause and prescribe a remedy. Imagine that you have found such a healer, that you're able to check out this person. And by checking them out, you develop complete confidence in him or her. How would you feel if you found such a healer? If the healer told you that the food you have been eating your whole life is in fact poison to you, and then showed you different food to eat and a remedy that would definitely heal you, what would you do? Would you want to continue eating this poisonous food? or take the healer's remedy. And if you found healing assistants who understood how and when to take the remedy and offered to help you do that, would you want their help? What if you investigated and found that this combination of healer, remedy, and healing assistance could help not only you, but all the others with similar diseases? Where would you put your trust? How relieved would you be? The healer is the Buddha. The remedy is the Dharma. The healing assistants are the Sangha. A reliance on them to cure the disease of suffering is refuge. Imagine what this might feel like. Now just think that any positive potential, any little seed that might be born in our minds, this kind of practice can lead to develop true refuge, to a commitment to taking the remedy as directed by the Buddha, but not just for ourselves, but to also help all other living beings. And now when you're comfortable, just return to the class.